So my peer-reviewed paper was titled Violent Deaths and Traumatic Bereavement: The Importance of Appropriate Death Notification by Diego de Leao, Christina Anil, and Anna Ziliotto. Now, basically, they wanted to explain how inadequate death notification can negatively affect the mourning process for those affected. And they also wanted to explain the basic principles for proper death notification. So they considered two perspectives, first being the first responders, and then the second being the survivors of the crime. And it focuses on the time of communication, the mode of communication, and the behavior of communication. Now, the first thing, or the first setting that they looked at was death notification in hospital settings. And they first talked about for sudden death, you wanted to gradually allow survivors to understand what happened. But if it was a person in the ICU, you wanted to provide the survivors with up-to-date information, and that would help them with anticipatory grief. And when telling people about death, you wanted to have the most experienced doctor in the hospital or in the situation. You wanted to have them being the ones to tell them of the death. And you wanted to have it be in a private room. And you wanted the person telling the survivors of the death to use plain linear language using a calm and emphatic voice. Now, you wanted to avoid using gone or left us, but instead use terms like, I'm sorry, but your loved one is dead. And this would allow them to truly understand what has happened and not allow for any sort of miscommunication. And you might need to repeat the news multiple times in order for them to truly understand what's happening. And you, after letting them know of the death, you should spend time with the family in order to answer questions. Now, the second one that they looked at was communicating violent death in non-hospital settings. Now, for these sort of situations, you wanted to make sure that the information was provided in a timely manner so that the news was not learned through the media, because that would not be helpful in any way. It would not help with the grieving process. Before letting them know of the death, you wanted to collect as much details as possible of the dead to make sure that if there's any questions for clarity on who was killed, that you could provide it to the survivors. As well, you wanted to collect as much information, not just about the dead or the person, but about the accident as well, so that if they had any questions about the accident, that you would be able to tell them as much information as possible. Uh, and if communicated at the survivor's home, you wanted to make sure that the first responder had a backup to control any outbursts or emotional distress that the survivors felt. You also wanted to refer to the deceased by their name instead of saying uh, anything other than that. You want to make sure that you're saying their name when talking about them. Now, following the communication of death, you wanted to make sure that it was accompanied by, and if it was accompanied by a strong reaction from the survivor, you want to make sure that you accompany those survivors to a quieter room in order to maintain their association to the here and now, as these strong reactions can make it feel like they're detached from their own body, or they're feeling like they're living in a dream or an unreal world. Now, you want to make sure that you don't report on any disfigurement, nor attribute any responsibility in accident dynamics, as that could uh, hinder the grieving process. They in this article they also said that family members should never be informed of the death by telephone, but if telephone communication is the only way to communicate the death to them, that you should make sure that another family member is present with them in order to help with the grieving process. Now, following the communication of death, you should also make sure that you're available for questions, and you should stay with the family for a certain amount of time. Now, moving on to the identification of the body, um, you should make sure that you inform them of what they'll see, because there could be very gruesome details if they were to view the body. And also, they talked about you should tell them or provide them with alternate options, such as DNA, fingerprints, or more, instead of seeing the body if they don't want to. And that's basically all they had. And this is just some more highlights, uh, just saying why people may want to touch the body or view the body final time. And that's all I had for my article. Thanks.